Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. All right, Chad Millman, CCO Action Network. I actually think this is an intriguing Super Bowl. So the Niners last time here were a stacked defensive roster, limitations offensively. Now they're historically gifted. A top 5 running back ever, CMC. Top left tackle 5 ever. A top 10 tight end ever. Debo is one of the top multi-usage players I can ever remember. I mean, they win 70% of the games with him, 47% without him. And then you have Brandon Ayuk, who has really surged this year to become an elite top 7-8 wide receiver. In fact, the weakness you would say is, well, the quarterback doesn't throw a great deep ball. Quarterback's not great if the weather's bad. But I think Kansas City's defense, generally great defenses, we think of them, Ray Lewis. We can name the players. You know, Bosa, Butkus, or Richard Dent. You can name great players from great defenses, right? Kansas City, you're like, well, I like Chris Jones. Best corners in the league. Incredibly active wide receivers, multiple pass. They had 9 more sacks than the Niners, 26 more pressures. I think this is an all-time classic gifted offense and one of the most undervalued defenses I can ever remember. So I like the under 47.5. I think there's going to be yards and explosion plays, but not a lot of touchdowns. What do you think?
I think you've hit on all of the things that make this such an interesting game to analyze for bettors. Take this game, put it in week 5, make the Niners 2-point favorites. No one's betting it. It'd be like, yeah, seems about right. I don't really see an edge. But because it's the Super Bowl, people feel like they need to figure out what side they want to be on, and they are ignoring the total. I will tell you right now, professional bettors have been coming in on the under in this game for 10 days at this point. And it's really interesting. The over, up until about 48 hours ago, was getting 57, 58, 59% of the tickets, meaning that's what the squares, the public, are doing. And the under was getting about 60% of the money. That's professional bettors. In the last 48 hours, the under is now also getting the majority of the tickets, and the under is getting the majority of the money. So I do think you'll see this number go down a little bit. I bet the under. I will probably end up being heavier on the under than I will on the side.
I like Kansas City +2, the Mahomes factor and Andy Reid with extra time. But I do think there's something that's fairly obvious, is that in 5 of 8 quarters in the playoffs, and I judge that against average defenses, Detroit, Green Bay, at home, Brock Purdy was incredibly pedestrian. Mahomes at Buffalo, at Baltimore, minus 27 degrees. Didn't have a bad quarter. I can't wrap my brain around Brock Purdy struggling against significantly less talented defenses at home. He'll be nervous. Kyle Shanahan may be tight given the history. This defense is, they allowed 17 points a game in a league that has pivoted, in a conference with all the best quarterbacks, in a league that's pivoted to offense. And if you go look at who the Chiefs faced, it was Goff, it was Trevor Lawrence, it was Jalen Hurts, it was Josh Allen, regular and post. They never allowed over 30 points. The Niners did 3 times, and they mostly faced Sam Howells, Geno, Drew Lock. Like, I think the gap in defense, you just know some of the Niner players. I don't think it's a great defense. Do you?
No, and I think you're hitting the nail on the head, and why I like the Chiefs at +2. I actually bet them at +2.5 when this opened 10 days ago. This Chiefs defense, you just mentioned some things they did during the regular season. Second lowest scoring defense in the NFL, just behind by fractions of a point, the Baltimore Ravens. In the playoffs, against 3 of the most vaunted, high-powered offenses through the entire season.
2 on the road.
The Bills, the Ravens, allowed an average of 4 points per game in the second half. And I think the real key—
That's incredible.
It's incredible. And I think the real key to this game, and it's also why people like the under, Andy Reid this season has played more conservatively in the second half. He is not on purpose, but the offensive game plan has been slower. I believe they both want to go slow. I believe both of these teams believe in their kickers. At least the Chiefs really do. Kyle Shanahan is not the kind of guy to go for it on fourth down. You are less likely to do it when you're facing Patrick Mahomes, when you believe in your defense, like I think the Niners do. I think the key to this game really is going to be how the defensive coordinators adjust in the second half. And if the Chiefs get out to a lead, how is that going to spook Kyle Shanahan? How is that going to spook Brock Purdy? We've seen it all offseason. The best quarterbacks in the game make bad decisions when they fall behind against Patrick Mahomes. He is a complete model wrecker. You cannot account for that in any of the handicapping. And a lot of the conversations this week about handicapping this game have been about how do you account for recency bias with what the Chiefs have been doing, and how do you account for what the Niners have done all season long? And I think that you have to consider, is recency bias something that is a better indication of how the Chiefs have gotten better, how Andy Reid has changed his game plan, and to bring it full circle, how Steve Spagnuolo has made adjustments in the second half of every game this season, but especially in the last 6 weeks of the season. I think that'll be the key. We've seen it in every playoff game this year. And by the way, we didn't see Steve Wilks do that.
That's right.
The Lions lost that game because the Lions made bad plays, not because the Niners all of a sudden were playing so much better defensively. And I think when you've got a zone heavy scheme on defense against Patrick Mahomes, whose receivers don't have very big average depths of target, you're setting yourself up to get sort of dink and dimed until the Chiefs are scoring. And then you're behind.
Mahomes has become more comfortable with that this season. It's
exactly.
Kind of, you know, I would say Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo are the best coaching duo in the league. I do think DeMeco Ryans and Bobby Slowick for Houston are the best young coaching combination in the league. But I don't think Steve Wilks. I think he's been a downgrade from DeMeco Ryans. They're not as good as in the red zone. They're pass rush. They don't generate the pass rush outside of Bosa. So I think what we're looking at is, and I think you hit on something. There's two whammies that work in Kansas City's favor. Mahomes screws with everybody's head. You tend to call a more aggressive game because of Mahomes. Nobody's calling wacky plays because of Brock Purdy. Maybe the opposite. Secondly, Kyle's lost games in the Super Bowl. He had one. Does Andy Reid get into his head? Does it get into his head? I asked Drew Brees that today. I said, you know, you go to the Super Bowl, you didn't have this litany. I mean, the Niners have been great for 30 years mostly. They haven't won since 94. This team has been great for 6 years, right? That shit gets tight, right? Like, you say whatever you want. This is going to be a loose Kansas City team with the best head coach and DC duo in the league, playing with confidence. An underdog. I think if it's close late, I think all the intangibles go to Kansas City.
I've got a Cowherd take on this. Patrick Mahomes isn't playing just to win this title. He's playing for legacy. And Patrick Mahomes is such a gifted player. We're talking about a guy who is at the top of his craft, potentially beyond Tom Brady. And the path he will be on, if he wins this game, is far beyond the accomplishments of just one season. And I think he's a game wrecker, as we said, because he can think beyond that, and he will not shrink in the moment. And I think to your point about Shanahan, to your point about Brock Purdy, and I don't think this is necessarily specific to them, but in this case, it will be them. Mahomes makes you do things you wouldn't normally do. And if you've got the monkey on your back because you haven't been able to close the deal in the Super Bowl and you're going against Patrick Mahomes, let's remember, Patrick Mahomes lost the Super Bowl against the Bucs because he had no healthy offensive linemen. None. Like, all of these things, you get clarity looking back in history. So I do think that the context of Mahomes playing for legacy and being driven enough to know that's what he's playing for beyond this season, I think that's an X factor.
DraftKings, the leader in fantasy sports, just dropped a brand new fantasy game called Pick Six. It's the newest way for you to get in on fantasy football action with DraftKings Sportsbook. Just pick between 2 and 6 NFL players and predict if they're going to have more or less of a stat. For example, a player will have more or less than 100 rushing yards or more than 1 touchdown. Okay? Track your lineup, compete against others for a shot at a huge cash prize. Fantastic. DraftKings Sportsbook, official sports betting partner of the NFL. Sign up now. Takes 90 seconds. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. The code is Colin, C-O-L-I-N. The crown is yours. I don't do a ton of props, but Brock Purdy over under 247 passing yards. So Brandon Ayuk is sensational, but you're talking about Snead's an elite corner that when he guards you, the quarterback has a 65 passer rating and a 52% completion rate. You can put Snead. McDuffie's also excellent. So I don't think they'll beat the Chiefs over the top. They could dink and dunk, but I'm Kyle Shanahan. There's a fairly obvious way to map this game out. I want to see Mahomes as little as possible. A lot of Debo, a lot of Christian McCaffrey, and Debo in some running sets, which we know he can do. But it felt like he did more of that pre-contract than both. I don't have the data to support that. But the way to win this game for them is I'm not putting it on Brock Purdy's shoulders, and we're not going to get cheap yards over the top. This is a Debo Christian McCaffrey game. Secondly, is that San Francisco, and I can't figure it out because nobody's tied to their play sheet and more than Kyle Shanahan. They've not been a great first quarter team in the playoffs. Green Bay outplayed them. Detroit outplayed them. So it's like you're not going to get major yards early. They're going to be fairly cautious, I would think, with Brock Purdy early in the Super Bowl, right? Like they're not going explosion plays. You're not going to get cheap crap over the top because the Chiefs' pass rush is excellent. And their corners are, in my opinion, the best young corners in the game. I'm actually surprised. 247 is a lot of yards when you have Christian McCaffrey. That's all. And against a Chiefs defense, Baltimore was reluctant to run. They could have. Gus Edwards' first run was 15 yards. His second carry was in the second half. They could have run. So that number to me seems high.
Well, look, Colin, I had Gus Edwards over 40.5 rushing yards. And when he ran
so did I
for 15 yards on that first play, I'm like, I'm golden. Like I'm watching in the action app and I see like his percentage chance of covering that was like 80%. And then it was 70. And then it was 60. And then it was 50. And all of a sudden he ran one more time the entire game. And that, by the way, is indicative of how coaches and players change their game plan and change their style when you're playing Patrick Mahomes. I think the Niners, I'm not trying to avoid your question. I don't have a strong opinion on Purdy. I would probably lean to the under. I think it's lined about right. I don't see a huge edge in Brock Purdy and his passing yardage. I think I do see Debo Samuel over his receiving yardage as a bonus because I think he's going to line up in the slot. I think that's a little bit of an advantage because you're not having to go against really good corners against the Chiefs and you're going against smaller linebackers. And so if they are going to find some success, that could be where it is. And I also agree with you. Look, if the Niners are winning this game, they're doing it on the ground, thrashing a mediocre Chiefs run defense. I won't say terrible Chiefs run defense. It's mediocre. It's a mediocre defense. So I think the advantage here is to run McCaffrey and run Debo Samuel. Would I say you're betting over the McCaffrey yardage? I don't think so, because I do think that the Chiefs know they'd almost rather put the ball in Brock Purdy's hands than let McCaffrey beat him because he is so talented. So those are a couple of tricky props, I think, to bet. I will tell you one bet that I love that I think is underpriced right now. Christian McCaffrey, first rush over 3.5 yards. Happens 60 to 65% of the time. And then the circumstances, and then the percentage increases with circumstances like we are looking at this week with a defense that isn't quite as good as what the Niners were always facing. So if you're looking for sort of a sneaky fun prop that'll be over quickly, you'll either know right away if you're going to win that one. But that's one that I like.
By the way, I'm going to defend the Chiefs' run defense a little, not overwhelmingly. but you don't play catch up with the Chiefs like you used to. So people simply run more against Kansas City. In previous years, the Chiefs defense was viewed, oh, they don't allow many rushing yards because you're always trailing.
Yeah.
This Chief team has been trailing. So people aren't getting into shootouts. And when you don't get into shootouts with Mahomes, you find comfort in running and eating the clock because Mahomes is in your head. So people are much more willing to run against Kansas City. I don't think their run defense is bad. They're too athletic at linebacker for it to be bad. They really have good, twitchy linebackers.
Yeah.
But this defense has the best corners and excellent pass rush. So people attack the run game more. And I think, again, I don't think it's a great run defense. It's not Baltimore. But I think it's a little over discussed how poor it is based on if you knew you didn't have to get into a shootout with Mahomes, you'd want to run the damn clock so we'd get 2 less possessions. So people go into a week and say, we're going to commit to the run. Well, if you commit to the run, you run the ball more and you run the ball with more success. So I think people have gone into games with Kansas City thinking, hey, we got to be good situationally in the red zone because when we get chances, we got to score touchdowns, not field goals. That was forever. That's been the mantra with Kansas City. You got to get touchdowns, not field goals. Teams go for it in 4th down. You don't really have to with this team.
I agree.
Run the ball. So I think the defense for Kansas City is excellent against the pass. I think it's okay against the run.
Good enough.
Good
right?
enough.
And I think that to bring a full circle, that plays into why we like the under. And the game script that we're expecting is going to be that both teams play some kind of ball control offense, which is really what they've been doing all year, right? These have not been explosive from a Niners perspective, a Chiefs perspective, not an explosive offense. And the Niners, while they can be explosive, are more than likely recognizing that their ability to win this game is going to be dependent on their ability to run the ball. So as long as they can be committed to that, I like our chances on the under. Do I think either side is a lock? Not really. I will say one thing you want to consider. When teams win the Super Bowl, they tend to win by a field goal or more. Yeah. So if you really like the Chiefs, another fun alternative bet to make, Chiefs minus 2.5 at plus 130, 135, because you're getting better odds. And if you think it's going to be a close game and the Chiefs are going to win, you might as well take the Chiefs at minus 2.5, which is the limit of where you want to be. I'm sort of taking an alt line here and getting a little bit of extra juice.
Chad Millman, been great. My 3-teamer is Chiefs plus 2, under, and Brock under 247 passing yards. Give me a 3-teamer very quickly.
I will take Chiefs plus 2. I will take the under, and I will take Deebo Samuel over 58.5 receiving yards.
I think you're right on that. You know, the other thing with him, bubble screens. He gets cheap yards. He gets those. He turns 4 into 9 like 3 times a game. You get a lot of cheap stuff.
With Trent Williams out in front of him, best lineman in football. Come on.
Nothing cheap about that living room. Boy, that is
dude, I am in a listen, you'll appreciate this. And we didn't, we saw each other last night at the amazing volume party. That thing, dude, 4 years ago in LA, that was like, 150 people in a backyard by the pool. Last night, I don't even know how many people were at this place last night, but it was massive and full of star power. And I was like telling somebody that, and you can appreciate this. I first started coming out to Vegas to write my book, The Odds, about these guys who bet on sports for a living.
Yeah.
The interplay between bookmakers and bettors 25 years ago, right? And some of the guys that I was profiling, like Boston Red and the guys at the Stardust were the bookmakers that I profiled. One of the guys that I profiled is now the CEO at the Mirage Hotel. So I came into town.
What's his name?
Joe Lupo.
Oh, I know the name, yeah.
Yeah, and so Joe Lupo is now the CEO at the Mirage Hotel. And so I came into town and he sets me up in a room that is so freaking big. I've got a bathroom on one side of the room and an equally large bathroom on the other side of the room. And I've got a grand marble foyer. I've got a suite that is so high roller. When I go to check in, the question is, what kind of line of credit would you like? It's not like, do you need a line of credit? It's automatically assumed I need a line of credit. When I walked in, I was sitting there checking in. A guy walked in behind me. He's on his phone saying to a guy, I don't know who he's talking to. He's like, listen, I'm going to need another 100 grand on the line of credit. I'm already down 100 grand. I haven't even checked in. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. I started with 250. Let's put another 100 grand in there. Breaks out a wad of cash. Like, it's a different game here. Just a different game.
I'll
But
tell you my,
you know, it's
I'll tell
like
you,
you were here. You started
yeah,
your career here.
yeah,
Like the fact that the Super Bowl is here, that there's professional hockey here, that they're talking about baseball here, even though sports betting is not as big a thing here. If you look at the numbers, Nevada's like kind of irrelevant as a sports betting
yeah,
market. It's annoying, but it's a major league sports town now.
yeah. I'll give you a 90-second sports story. I arrive in Las Vegas. I drive in, and I'm going to meet my boss out of college at the Circus. I get there about an hour early, drive in, driving as fast as I can in my AMC Pacer. I arrive, and my mom's checking on me like every 6 hours. How am I doing? I get to the Circus. I put a quarter in a slot. I win $75 first pull. I went to a phone. I called my mom. I said, Mom, love this town. Don't send money.
I
And
locked
I
in.
never, ever in 7 years pulled another handle that won.
Yeah.
My first pull, $75. Never won again. Ever.
No, it's so funny. I checked when I was checking in yesterday. I was in this room, like this super VIP room where you go to check in, and they needed like 15 minutes to finish cleaning up my massive suite. And so I had a little bit of work to do. I pulled up my computer and I was responding to a Slack from the CFO of our company. And I'm like, all right, let me just do this and I'll finish this in 10 minutes. And he goes, what are you doing? I'm like, well, my room's not ready yet. He goes, your room's not ready and you're responding to me instead of going to gamble right now. I'm like, guy, I got to pace myself. I'm not losing all my money in the first 15 minutes. I'm here. I want to leave up. I'm going to be very disciplined about this. You don't get rich taking money out of your pockets, Colin. That's what I say.
Chad Millman, CCO Action Network. I got to go pick up my wife at the airport, my beautiful wife. Good
Go
talking to
get
you,
it,
buddy.
brother. See ya.